Adara Foundation really focuses on women and youth empowerment, um, with a direct line to economic empowerment and economic development. Clearly, in order to do this, one of the areas that we've seen has been most important for entrepreneurs like yourself is, starting a business is one thing, getting money from it is another thing, but actually building for sustainability and unlock and positioning your organization to unlock capital is an entirely different dynamic. It's a learned skill. And in this session today, what we've asked is for Iyin to really open up his playbook to us, if you will, on how to build a robust business, how to attract sustainable growth, or how to architect sustainable growth. What kind of funding frameworks are useful, and how do you get scale for stability? And then, of course, the $1 million question that every $1 million, million naira question that everybody asks is, how do I then unlock capital for my business? It's indeed my pleasure to also then welcome Ozinna Anumudu, and another great mind. Now, the privilege we have is that she is actually an expert. Um, she's an expert in strategic communications. That's the biggest skill set that I want to highlight today. Amongst many other things, she's a seasoned Nigerian entrepreneur as well. So she has that lens of someone who's done it. The fact that she's a strategist for comms, for brands, for our culture, for commerce, and in particular for storytelling. She's the creative director for Ozinna.com. And she's also the founder of TSC Agency. Now, both those two organizations have played a key role in actually promoting fashion, enterprise, and on our arts and cultures. And she's done this with international and local brands across the globe, including Puma, Chanel, and many other African institution and lifestyle brands. So it's my pleasure to welcome Ozinna today. There's a lot that we can learn from her, especially in regards to our own storytelling in terms of the businesses that you have and how you go about branding it, etc. A great mind. Thank you for joining us, Ozinna. Aboyeji, another great mind that we have, serial entrepreneur, as we call him, um, who he's just recently received a doctorate from a Nigerian university in recognition of his contribution and talent to the tech sector. Co-founder of Flutterwave, or rather, co-founder of Andela, a tech company, tech education company, co-founder of Flutterwave, tech payments company, and now co-founder of Future Africa, a platform that is designed to actually help entrepreneurs figure out how they can grow into $1 million businesses. He will give you examples of some pretty astounding examples of companies that they've supported over the years. Without further ado, and understanding that we've started quite late, I'm going to hand over the mic literally to Ozinna, who's kindly agreed pro bono. Thank you to moderate this session.
Thank you so much for the very, very kind introduction. I'm looking forward to this session. Even though I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, it's always amazing to listen to people who started before us and just learn. And so, in as much as I'm here as a moderator, I'm also here as a learning and a budding entrepreneur as well. Ian, so you can take the mic away and we're going to all listen in. And towards the end, we'll share our questions with you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, can everybody see me?
Mm-hmm. Yes, we
Awesome.
can see you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ozina. Thank you very much, Auntie Yvonne, and to the many, many great people that I see here. Amazing group of mentors and friends that are trying to help the next generation of those of you who are innovating to build. And it's indeed a pleasure to be here with you today. So I was asked to share a few thoughts around building your businesses for growth. And I'm not sure that I've learned enough in this respect, but I just figure that today I'll try and share just a few quick ideas around it. And then my hope is that in the question and answer, we'll be able to get to enough substance, you understand, and get things to work. So um, I had a few thoughts to share just broadly around, I'm just taking cognizance of my notes. I have a few thoughts to share around what it takes to build a high growth venture, and then how to think about funding for a high growth venture. And generally, I think one of the things that I try to explain to entrepreneurs, and I know that many of you are sort of in your sort of very early stages, is that one of the important things that helps a lot is when you are able to really identify a human need where people prize the value that you're creating above the amount of money that they're paying for the service. And it's usually a very, very small, a small window. It's usually a wedge, so to speak, where the problem is so painful that people want their money less than they want the value they are creating. And I find that this framework actually is able to work in any context, depending on what exactly it is that you're trying to build. Because what often hampers a lot of entrepreneurs is an inarticulate or misunderstanding, a misunderstanding of what the human need is and the context around that human need. And that's why one of the things that you hear me say a lot is that the most prized asset of an entrepreneur is customer insight. How well do you understand your customer? And how well can you leverage that understanding of your customer to then be able to create a new world that even your customer didn't recognize that they wanted? So I know some of you, probably doing something in the creative space or in the SME space. But the same principle typically applies. What you find is that there are customers who have very particular quirks. I'll use a practical example. One of my pet peeves is how difficult it is to find somebody who can cut hair after hours. Now, there's a lot of barbershops, but usually at the time the barbershops open, I'm at work. So obviously, I'm not going to be cutting my hair. And at the time that I have time to cut my hair, barbershops are not open. So what that means is that I'm happy to pay a massive premium, and I'm probably not the only one to have somebody come to my home and cut my hair at what I would consider my own convenience, right? That is how you create a niche in the market, right? That is how you start to fill a customer need. Now, I'm not willing to pay if people cut hair in a barbershop for 1,500 naira or 2,000 naira. I'm definitely not going to pay that amount of money, right? I'll probably be looking to pay 5,000, even 10,000 naira just to cut my hair, because for me, the gift of my time is far more important than money. So this is generally how growth tends to be architected, because now you've arrived at a particular customer segment, and what you just need to now figure out is how do you find, with this unique customer insight of how a particular kind of person's life is patterned, or company's business is patterned, how do you now find people who can serve that, find more people like me, for example, who have that need, right? And then you now start to think about, on a unit economics level, how do you fulfill that need? And then you start thinking about, broadly speaking, how do you scale that need, right? So if, for example, I decided I was going to build a barber shop for busy people like me, right? It probably wouldn't be a shop. It would most likely be, hey, we do private home haircuts for very busy people. And there's probably a list of, 4,000, 5,000 busy executives that could patronize you, right? And all you just need to figure out is, okay, how do you now equip your staff right? With the tools, with this unique customer insight, with the right level of service to be able to fulfill that need. So this is just using this example. And that's where funding becomes important. But there are three things about funding that people often get wrong. And I want to quickly touch on them. The first thing about funding people get wrong is that they think that funding is required for you to start. Now, funding, I don't think it's required for you to start, but for you to grow, yes, you would need funding, right? Because you would need to be able to scale ahead of when revenues will come. But you have to start something for it to then become considered fund worthy. Or, I mean, one of my mentors, Mabatomi Davis, would say investment worthy. So very, very important, right? And the core element of something that is considered investment worthy is what we just discussed now when it comes to strategy, right? Which is, what is the growth strategy here? What have you figured out about a unique customer base that is unique to that is a unique way of doing things that really fulfills that customer's problem, right? A barbershop that does what I was just describing is not just another barbershop. Very, very important. Now, the next thing that makes you investment worthy when you're looking for funding is then thinking about the team. Because at the end of the day, everybody recognizes that a growing business cannot be built by one person. It has to be built by a group of people, right? The very early team has to come with a deep knowledge of the customer expertise, a deep love, and it can only be discovered from a deep love from the customer and keen observation about what customers like and don't like about the current solutions that are on the market. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing new under the sun. But if you're able to build a team of people who have that unique customer expertise, it's going to really, really change your business and how you can execute, because you're going to be able to put in a bit of the nuances that your competitors will miss. Things that your competitors will consider wasteful, you know that's where you need to focus your time and energy and things of that sort. And the next thing is operations, right? And this is fundamental to a business that can be funded for growth. What a lot of people don't do well is they don't have a clear pathway for people to get from I'm requesting X from you to I'm going to get X back from you as a business in the shortest possible time. What you see a lot of companies do is try and copy what somebody else is doing, right? So you see a lot of people try and copy maybe other businesses they've seen do it. But you have to ask yourself, why is a barber shop open at, you know, um, um, 1 o'clock in VI? Like, whose hair are they going to cut? Or in Ikoyi, right? Anybody that lives in those areas is most likely there at work, right? Um, um, Except they're actively looking for customers that are willing to come and cut their hair during a break. Chances are they're going to remain empty most of the day, right? And, even at night, there's no guarantees that people are going to want to operate them. So you have to really think uniquely, okay, given my customers' needs, how should my operations be laid out in such a way that somebody makes a request for a barber or somebody gets a barber at a specific time when they are free, possibly after hours, right? What kind of safeguards need to be put in place? Do we provide transportation? Do we provide equipment? Should we make sure the customer has their own equipment? In which case, we need to sell the customer some equipment. All these things factor into an operating model. And this operating model basically plots the journey of your customer from start to finish until investors see that they don't believe that you're ready for funding, right? The next thing is satisfy your customer. It's another thing for you to get paid, right? Some of us are very familiar with customers where, they take a lot of credit from us. They don't pay on time, right? So how do you start to build a business where you're able to better rank your customer prospects, build the relationship to close, and even after closing, be able to provide credits to people to be able to, maybe do business with you, but you're also ranking that credit to make sure that you don't have too much of it out with people who are notorious for not paying it. Very, very important to have that revenue, have a payables department as you grow, right? Have a very clear cash conversion cycle as you grow. Very, very important. The final thing is yield, because at the end of the day, you're doing this for profit. You're not doing this just because you like other people's faces, but you're doing this for profit. And if you're doing something for profit, you want to make sure that people know what you have a clear idea on a unit economics level, but even on a broad-based level, right? Where the profit is in the business. And that's where yield comes in. Even when you raise money for your business, you want to make sure that, because a lot of people get killed on these loan sharks, right? Where because they're so emotionally invested in business and they haven't thought about it as a separate thing from their core business, they end up, you find that they have negative yields. You understand? That means that their investment is eroding value, but they don't know, right? So you really want to think about yield. You want to think about cost of money every time you deploy capital, even if that capital is equity, right? You want to think about how you can design around, people and things of that sort. So these are some of the principles that have helped me, right? Making sure you have the right strategy, i.e., you're selling the right product to the right person for the right reasons. Making sure you have the right team, that is a team that deeply understands the customer and can help you better serve them. Making sure you have the right operating model, which means how does your customer get value out of you, right? Making sure you have the right revenue platform, meaning that you have people who are chasing your money up and down. They're not just doing the work and hoping that people will pay. There's somebody who's actually chasing up and making sure that people pay. And the less time, the more time you give them, the less pressure they are, generally speaking. And then finally, yield, right? Because you want to make sure that every amount of money that goes in comes back, not a loan, but with $2 or $3 other dollars. So how do you think about yield in that context and how to get it to work for your business? So these are just a few tips, and hopefully it's been helpful, and we can now take some questions.
Thank you, Iyin, for such an insightful session. Can you guys hear me?
You're welcome.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, great. While we compile the questions, I just have one or two of my own. So something I myself struggled with a lot was finding structure. You know how you were just talking about, you just mentioned now, speaking about, what's it called? Having other people do things. Most entrepreneurs, at least on my end, and I guess most people on the call as well, started off quite young or starting off with small teams. When do you, where do you find that point to decide, okay, I need to hire, I need to create a team, I need to build, because what if the business cannot necessarily afford it? What would be your advice?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is really building. I've had the privilege of building businesses that required more than my skill sets, right? And I think that might be one thing that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, which is that they feel like they have to be all encompassing to build a business. I've never had the privilege of doing that. And there must be something in your business that you're doing poorly, right? Or you could be doing better. I think the first thing is to delegate, and the first people to hire are people who do those things better than you, right? So, for example, if you're a fantastic designer, but you really don't know how your books work, you can bring on somebody who you think is fantastic at managing your books, part-time even, right? To just help you take over that function. And all of a sudden, you don't have to worry about that, and you can spend more time designing clothes. You understand what I'm saying? Or, yes, you understand how to design your clothes, but maybe you're not the best at customer service. You understand? You don't have time to pick up people's phones all the time. Somebody can do that. So what I usually advocate, to founders is, first of all, lay out what the job to be done is. That means everybody lay out, okay, this is what needs to happen, this is what needs to happen, this is what needs to happen, this is what needs to happen. You understand what I'm saying? And then start to think, okay, who are the best people that I know can do these roles very well? And you'll find that for many of them, they would actually be willing to work with you part-time, right? Before jumping in with their full 2 feet. I find that sometimes people are too eager to jump in with their full 2 feet, and that can be a challenge, right? because then everybody's thinking in terms of their sacrifice and so on and so forth. But sometimes just building a working relationship with somebody can really help. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yes, just to use myself as an example in one of my businesses. So I run an e-commerce website, Ozinna.com. It's a fashion platform for people to shop. So when we started, I was always overwhelmed because I was the one handling the social media. I was the one handling logistics with the companies. I was the one talking to the customers. I was the one talking to the web developers. And I got to a point where I realized like this is not my skill set. This is not for me. And so the first person I could afford was a brand manager who was able to do these things. And then when revenue started increasing, profits started increasing, then I was now able to create departments and okay, have a customer service department, have a logistics team, etc. So that's definitely good insights, and I appreciate that. We have a few questions coming in, so I'll just start with the first one. She says, as a young girl in the university, how can I start a business without it affecting my academic life?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think well, first of all, I would say your academic life is very important, and business should come secondary to it. However, I think you need to think about the type of business that you're doing and the amount of time that it requires, and also how much your how supported you are in doing it. So, for example, when I was in university as well, I started a business. Um, Now, I wouldn't say it didn't affect my academic life. It did. That would be a lie. But I think there were many better ways to
I'm
manage
sure you
time.
found a balance. You found a
Yeah,
healthy
yeah.
balance.
I found a healthy balance.
Yeah.
I mean, for one thing, and even on in retrospect, there are many other much more healthy ways to manage that balance. So, for example, you know, um, having co-founders in building your business, you understand, that definitely helps you quite a bit because then you can share the load, right? So it's not affecting one person. Um, Having building a business that doesn't really require you to leave campus, that tends to also help quite a bit. It turns out, right? Because at least you can build your business. You understand what I'm saying? um, and um, and without really worrying about office space, getting to the office, things like that. So and also if you don't take in investment, it's also helpful. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. Hmm.
Because then you kind of grow at your own pace and you're not under a lot
You're
of
not
pressure
overwhelmed.
to
Yeah.
repay anybody. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Our next question is, what's one strategic decision you've made that had the biggest long-term impact on your business? So a strategic decision that's had the biggest
Yeah.
long-term impact. That's a very
Well,
specific question.
across all my businesses, I think the one strategic decision I made was that I wanted to build teams, not of people who were who were my peers necessarily, or of people who were friendly to me. I wanted to build teams of amazing people who knew what they were doing, um, and um, and were experts in their field. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that was very important to me, and that has been a really really strong lesson. One of my mentors told me something that really changed my life. He said, you know, if you can build a really good $10 billion company on your own. Of course, he was talking in millions of dollars because he's a big man. So you can build a really good $10 million company, but the only way to build $1 billion company is for three people who can build a really good $10 million business on their own to come together. And he said the impact will be exponential, right? So I think that was for me the most important thing, making sure that I look for the best team members for all my startups.
Great, great. So we have a lot of questions, but I'm just trying to sift through them. There's been a lot of challenges about the Nigerian workforce being underskilled. How did you navigate that in your early years?
Well, my first business was training. So
Mhm.
naturally,
Mhm.
because my first business was training, my default in most of my business is actually to train people, right, on how to build better. Because for me, I think the biggest arbitrage with Nigerian labor, right, is the difference between an unskilled person who comes to you hungry for knowledge, but willing to do the work and very committed, and the kind of person they become after they have attained the skill, also willing to pass that knowledge on to others.
Yeah.
So that is my favorite demographic to hire, and I found it to be economically profitable and very impactful to really partner with these types of people.
Okay. The next person says, I'm truly inspired by the impact you've built and the kind of people you've been able to lead. As the founder of Teen Crafter Africa, how did you intentionally build a team that not only works with you, but deeply believes in and stays committed to the vision? I feel like you just kind of answered that question a bit.
Yeah. I mean, the
Yeah.
biggest thing is really, and it seems cliche, but being able to articulate why what you're building is important actually helps quite a bit when it comes to hiring or retaining people.
Mhm.
And for me, I have to first answer that question for myself before I start a business. What I learned very early in my career was that when the only reason why a business exists is to make you the principal money, it's a very difficult business to scale, at least without dropping a lot of money. But if you are able to somehow, build the kind of environment where people are excited about coming to work because they're changing people's lives, then it tends to be a lot easier to retain talent.
My next question, for founders who are not yet at the stage of formal institutional funding, what is one thing you wish you had documented or systematized earlier that made the difference when serious funders eventually came to the table? Oh, I like that's a
Yeah.
detailed, necessary question.
You the biggest thing was the unit economics, like being very clear about what it took to produce the product, um, made our pricing higher fidelity, made it easier, made it easier for us to be able to have a serious conversation with funders about how much was actually needed and what their return on investment was going to be. Um, so I think like really, really taking your time to document all your costs and being able to ascribe those costs appropriately, makes a big difference.
And the next question, there are a lot of handicaps to African founders when scaling their businesses. What unique advantages do African startups have that can help with assessing funding and scaling up as well?
So I think that's what I would say to answer that question is that there are a lot of challenges to starting and scaling up, primarily because a lot of people haven't really um, haven't really articulated the business that they're
Mhm.
doing, right? There's actually a lot of money anywhere, everywhere. I was talking to um, a few colleagues, younger colleagues in pension funds, and they were like, "Look, the country is flooded with cash, and they literally have nowhere to put it. And yields are coming down, interest rates are coming down. Everybody's trying to figure out what exactly is it that I'm going to do with all this money. So they really need people like you to go and build businesses so they can invest and make yield. But
Mhm.
a lot of people come into the conversation about funding with I beg you, please, can you please, and it's not great for them. That's the honest truth,
Mhm.
because nobody wants to invest money in a loser, right? Nobody wants to do you a favor when they're funding you. But again, people come at that because they've not really identified the full potential of their business by actually getting the job done and understanding the unit economics. They perhaps have a bold wish, right? They perhaps have a belief, but they've not really done the work. Do you understand what I'm saying? So what I want to advise founders to do is really take their time to do the work of building your business, getting into solid unit economics, then it becomes easier to convince people to invest because they know what they're getting out of it.
Yeah, I find that a lot of founders begin thinking they can get investment right at the very start and think I can get funding because, I have this vision, but they haven't really taken out time to do the work and, build a business and properly document the process. So thank you for that answer. And then our next question is, what does sustainable growth practically look like for a small organization or startup in today's economy?
That's a great question. I think for me, it's sustainable growth means that you're covering your unit economics, you're profitable, your unit economics profitable, but more importantly, you have an inverted cash cycle. So what that means is that you can fund your expansion from your balance sheets, right? If you're in that position, you're definitely growing sustainably, right? If you have to always bring in more and more and more investments to be able to fund your balance sheets and your expansion, that might not necessarily be as sustainable as you think it is, right? So I would say today, if I was a small business, I'm looking for a niche customer base that has capacity to pay, right? And that I understand their needs extremely well, right? And that is a growing demographic. Whether it's young people, whether it's women, that definitely helps a lot. Does that make
Okay,
sense?
great. Yes, it does. It does. It does. I think we're just gonna take 2 or 3 more questions. Um, what do you do when you're bootstrapping with some early revenue, need to scale and hire new people, but don't have the funds to have the funds to pay them yet? I
I
think.
mean, this is a fantastic terms. This is a fantastic test of whether your team believes in what you're building. And in my opinion, I think a lot of people rush out, like I was saying earlier, to go and hire when even getting people to work with you part-time, you may be able to get the best out of them, or at least enough that you can get to the next level, right? So I would advise you to, if you don't have the funds to pay people, don't hire them. At least don't hire them full-time, right? There's a lot of people who have a little bit of spare capacity that will be willing to work with you. That's
Yeah.
my advice.
One more before our last one. I like this question. It says, how do you decide what not to pursue, even when opportunities look attractive? I find that,
Mm.
entrepreneurs always want to just hop at everything. So when do you know not to pursue something? I quite like this
Yeah.
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a very simple framing. It's a three mantra framing. Um, I ask myself, you know, what what matters most to me, right? And for me, it's helping people get jobs in the digital economy. Um, Anything outside of that, not important to me, right?
Mhm.
So that's very easy to say no to. If something comes up in, I don't know, oil and gas, or something comes up in banking, I won't be there because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to me, right? The second thing is, what are we building that lasts, right? So for me, even if it's an opportunity in my space, I'm always thinking and talking to my partners and trying to understand, okay, what are we going to leave behind? Because we won't do this forever. So what are we actually building that is going to outlast us? If it's too short term, I'm not interested, right? If it's just about doing a deal or a contract or something like that, I might help, but it's very difficult to get me engaged for a very long period of time. And then the final question I ask is, what will um, what will this make possible if we're successful, right? Because for me, what gives me the big push to power through, endure through very difficult periods is understanding that the impact of what we're building has a reverb effect. So it's not just about the first line impact of getting this deal or this thing or this business done. It's also about what becomes possible because this exists. And across those three things, you know, I, I try to, I try to be helpful to entrepreneurs in that way.
Thank you so much, Iyin, for all your answers. I think one thing I've taken out of this, I mean, not a specific answer, but the characteristics of being very decisive and sticking to your guns. That's something I've noticed has transcended through all your answers, and I see that that's very important. And I think the session has been very, very insightful, very helpful for all of us. We're very grateful for your time. Thank you so much. And of course, thank you to the Adara Foundation for putting this together for us today as well.
Thank
You're
you
welcome.
very much. Thank you very much, Ozinna. Thank you very much, Iyin. I just wanted to just state a few things. We know that for many of you, starting your business is really quite daunting. We want you to stay engaged with us because we have many, many resources. One of them is to share with you experts like Ozinna, like Iyin, on how they have built their businesses. And we'll be running more masterclasses and more surgeries with that regard. We also have a next level funding scheme that we do where we give 500,000 Naira grants to companies, to entrepreneurs, to help them on that painful journey of setting up your business and finding the funding for it. The other things that we're going to run some more workshops in a workshop as opposed to masterclass in terms of how you can actually access some pools of liquidity that people have. Again, thank you very, very much. We know that this is a tough journey, especially in the environment that we're in today, and we're here to help. We want to make sure that there are many, many more businesses. We have access to a lot of information on different platforms, access to capital. Organizations that give grants is another one that you should stay in touch with us for, as well as, of course, what Adara Foundation does. We're working with one large institution on making making funding accessible to entrepreneurs that have either not as large scale and therefore attractive to banks at this point, or have not been in business long enough to have all the particularly bog standard requirements that are needed today. So we want to work with your community to reshape how businesses are supported in their growth journey and to reshape how access to capital is made over the long term. I want to end again by really thanking Iyin and Ozinna for your time, graciously given by both of you. And we want to say to everyone who's listening, please stay engaged, watch this space. There's more to come to support you on your journey. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us, ma'am.
All right, everyone, I guess we've reached the end of the session, and the government has said it's a long weekend with the holidays tomorrow. So enjoy your weekend and stay safe. Thank you.